Hey team, it's day 81. I hope you're doing well. 9 days to go. I know you guys are going to get this. Thanks so much for your support and pushing hard. I appreciate everything you've done and have really enjoyed bringing content and going to continue for some time to come, especially through the next 9 days, but then after that as well. Before we get into the goals, I want to talk about what is the waist to hip ratio. I know I've talked to you guys a little bit about BMI as a predictor of overall health and early death, but some of the followers have been like, hey, Richard, I thought you were crazy for even having that 206 pound, goal as, it's only 10 pounds heavier than you were out of high school. You're 6'3", you got a bigger frame. That's kind of crazy. My BMI is roughly that 27 and a half. And it started over 28. And for me, I've heard a lot of people say like, hey, BMI is not a good predictor at all, Richard, for you. And for me, it's like, well, let's see what the waist to hip ratio says then, because that is another predictor of overall health and things. We'll talk about how you do it, what it is, but let's quickly run through the 6 goals. I was 214.2, man, I'm gonna get to that 213, 212, I'm gonna hit it. I just need to keep going. 1808 calories, 128 ounces of water, 7 hours of sleep, 50 minutes of cardio, and 216 grams. So I'm hitting my numbers, but even throughout this 90 days, I haven't been super consistent, but that wasn't the point. Another one of my followers had told me like, hey man, you aren't super consistent. Well, that's because I'm human. Just like you guys are gonna be human. But what I believe we've proven with this is that focusing on the 3 main things of calorie, water, sleep, and staying as consistent as you can and keeping an eye on that over time and just being human like we are, simplifying the things you should probably target as it relates to overall health right away, getting into the habits of calories, water, sleep, which are all 3 really good things to focus on as you get older and you want longevity in your life. And then lastly, just simplifying the process, not giving you some kind of fad diet that you're gonna go on for a couple weeks and be done. And then like we talked about adaptive thermogenesis, we've talked about fat overshooting, we've talked about a lot of different things that I believe just focusing on those 3 things are gonna get you to overall health that you want. It may take longer than the fad diets to see the scale, but we've also known that just focusing on one number might not be the best way. And waist to hip ratio might be one thing you should look at as well as it relates to overall health. So let's get into it. So what is the waist to hip ratio? And simply said, it is the measure of basically your midsection, or what we call the waist, just above the belly button compared to your widest part of your hips, or right around your buttocks. And why is this used? Well, the American Diabetes Association has said waist to hip ratio is actually a better predictor of type 2 diabetes and premature death, along with cardiovascular disease and all sorts of things. Is BMI still a decent measure? Absolutely. There's tons of studies around BMI, but when you take a look at the waist to hip ratio, it might be able to tell you something even further based on your body shape. And even if your BMI is that 25 to 26 and a half, like I've said, if you have a larger midsection, and this is you can see it, and we always say that central obesity is worse, but if you have a larger midsection, a small waist, but yet your BMI for your height might fall into the acceptable BMI range, your waist to hip ratio might be off, and then goodness, you're at higher risk for cardiovascular disease and premature death based on a ton of different studies. So let's go over it. So basically it's the measure of just above the waist, right above the belly button, measure that, and then it's your widest part of your hips or around your buttocks. Now I'm Irish, I don't have a ton of buttocks, so mine would be about right here, and that would be the 2 measurements that you would need. Now, so what is the calculation? So the calculation is basically, it's your waist divided by your hips. So 2 measurements. So one is smallest part of waist, which is just above the belly button. It's taking me so long to write. And then number 2 is the largest circumference of hips, which is normally widest part around, and they say buttocks. All right, which I don't have, I'm Irish, I don't have a whole lot of buttocks. So I gotta work hard to actually get my buttocks. So I measure right around that hip where I tend to carry a love handle into my hip a little bit. That's the largest part for me. And then the calculation is 1 divided by 2, or waist circumference I think that's right, divided by hip circumference. Maybe it's just R. Okay, so when you're thinking about this, okay, it's like, well, how do I know what's what? So for instance, let's just say that if I had, my smallest part of my waist was 35 inches, and then the largest circumference of my hips was 35 inches, that would equal, you could do inches, centimeters, whatever, the ratio, as long as you're doing inches and not inches and centimeters, that would equal 1. So then it's like, what does that mean? Okay, so what does that mean? So, hey Richard, I got this, you know, this waist and hip circumference. I've divided my waist by my hips, and like I said, I got 35 over 35, so I got 1. What does that mean for me? Take a mental note or a screenshot, because I'm going to erase some of this because I don't like getting too low. I'll go from right here. So let's talk about the risk. And then we'll go here. I'm just going to make a little table for you guys. The risk, low, medium, high. Let's get this table better. Okay. Risk, low, medium, high. And then we're going to go, because I like my colors. Sorry. I'm trying to go quick so I don't keep you guys here. Women. And then I'm going to do blue for men, just because I like that. Okay, so for women, for men. So there actually is, it's just your calculation, right? So for women, on the low side, and for men, it's 0.8 for women and 0.95 for men. So basically 0.95 or lower for men, 0.8 or lower for women, okay? So then you say, okay, what does low mean? That means, hey, good job, man. You're probably in a low risk category for cardiovascular disease, premature death, type 2 diabetes, all that kind of stuff. Now, is this an end all be all? Well, you shouldn't use it in kids. I think it's people under 5 foot tall. There's a couple calculations, or there's a couple places that it's not as accurate, but it's another predictor, right? It's something just like looking at BMI, that you've got scales out there. You can take a look for your height and what your weight is. That's your BMI. Waist circumference is, or excuse me, waist to hip ratio is waist divided by hips. What's that ratio? Both of them will kind of give you an idea of if you are at a risk for cardiovascular disease, type 2 diabetes, premature death. And we all know if you got that, what I called cake pop or apple shape of a body, you do have higher risk just based on where you carry your extra weight. So the low is 0.8, 0.995 for men. And then it goes actually 0.8, you think it'd be like, oh, so is it like 0.9, does it blah, 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 blah? No, there's a really small scale here. It's a 0.81 to 0.85 is medium for women, and then greater than 0.85 is high risk, okay? So you can't even have an equal ratio as a woman to be in that risk, okay? So then you take a look at the men, and it's 0.96 to 1.0 is your medium, right? Okay, and then it's 1.0 or higher. All right, so if you have an equal waist to hips, you got high risk, right? So that's me, right? That's pretty much me. It's a little better now, but 20 pounds ago, it wasn't any better. Roughly, that's that. You know, that's just how it works. And do a little research, see what you think here, but get a flexible tape, measure right above your belly button, your skinniest part of your waist, thinnest part of your waist, take that number, biggest part of your hips, what they call your buttocks, depends on where it's at, you'll get that waist hip ratio. And that's why when women who I'm working with complain to me like, man, I carry all my weight here and in my legs, you know, and sometimes in the back of my arm, I'm like, that's fantastic, because you're gonna live longer because you're not as high at risk versus the females that carry their weight in the central adiposity place. And there's even some guys that'll carry it in their legs more than they do around their stomachs and things. That's not a bad thing. This, I always call this is literally dead weight. I've talked about that in previous videos. Like this will make you dead the more weight you have in the central part of your body, whether you're male or female. So what is the waist to hip ratio? To me, how I explained it is it's another tool that you can use or your doctors can use to predict your risk for cardiovascular disease, premature death, type 2 diabetes, all sorts of stuff, hypertension, whatever, everything that just isn't good. Just another thing you can use, and you can do it at home. It's quick, it's easy. Now, what are some of the drawbacks of it? Sometimes it's hard to get the measure. Maybe you force the tape a little too much. You pull it here, but you don't pull it there. So it's unless you are like super good or somebody else is helping you with it, you know, it's sometimes tough to get the exact measurement the way you should or the exact place. So people may tend to over or underestimate it. Here's the deal, man. It's just like BMI. If you're at the high risk level of that above 0.86 or even at that moderate for a woman or man, and you're doing this at home and you're watching this video and you're like, man, whoa, I'm at really high risk, call your doctor. Get in with your doctor, get some blood work done. Let's see what your lipids are. Let's see what your blood pressure is. Let's just get a CBC, you know, a complete blood count. Let's just do some labs. Let's run through some things with your doctor. So go in, get a physical. That's what I would recommend if you do this and you're like, oh my goodness, my numbers are crazy. Well, you know, it's a predictor, but it's not like a definite like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna die early. It's just, you know, one of those things, another one of those flags that can help you, that's easy to do and doesn't cost a whole lot for you to just measure by yourself, and then follow up with your healthcare professional when you're done. So hopefully this helps. Hopefully this was a decent idea for content. Remember, we are still focused on our calories, water, sleep. No doctor will get mad at you for trying to control what you eat. Drink and stay hydrated, and also sleep enough so you can replenish and get those toxins out of your body at night. I appreciate everybody that's following. I appreciate all the comments. I appreciate just everything, and I'm grateful to have this opportunity to be able to speak to you guys over this 90-day challenge. So thank you so much again for your support, and as always, I look forward to talking to you tomorrow. See you then.